Welcome to the saga of deception. I once thought that remaining discreet equated to safety. However, I discovered painfully that quietness merely shields the wrongdoers. I am Blake Morrison, and for a dozen years I assumed I had constructed something durable. An architectural firm thriving, a suburban home, a marriage with Karen that, though not ardent, appeared to be at least steady. Our weekends followed a predictable pattern. Saturdays were for farmers' market errands, while Sundays set aside for meal planning for the upcoming week. I should have detected the alteration. It was subtle. Karen started working late at her marketing agency more often, sometimes till 9 or even later. She would assert she'd already dined out, then retreat into extended bathroom soaks. Her phone, previously left casually on the kitchen counter, now accompanied her everywhere, even to the bathroom and postal service. But the most revealing sign was her frequent church visits. Karen, who hadn't been particularly religious, had only attended religious services to please her mother on special occasions. So, it came as a surprise when she disclosed joining a Bible study group that met Tuesdays and Thursdays evenings, and more perplexing when she volunteered for the church fundraising committee on Saturdays. I grew suspicious when she started attending Sunday services alone since I wouldn't enjoy them. On a rainy Wednesday in October, I returned home from work around 11 to find my laptop at home, but Karen's car in the driveway. This was odd, as Wednesdays were supposedly her busiest days. Opening the front door quietly, for unknown reasons, I heard voices upstairs. Karen was laughing, and a male voice, soft and intimate, followed. Standing motionless in my own entrance hall, I listened to my wife's laughter echoing like a teenager's in our bedroom. Instinctively, I contemplated ascending there. A segment of me yearned to do so, yet some force held me back. Perhaps it was the architect within, the part that won't demolish without first inspecting its construction. Thus, I retreated quietly, climbed into my car, and journeyed to a coffee shop where I remained for 2 hours, gazing blankly at nothingness, meticulously reconstructing our entire marriage in my mind with this latest dismal blueprint. That evening, Karen behaved completely normally. She inquired about my day, mentioned her mother needed aid moving furniture that weekend. She planted a kiss on my cheek before bed. I replied not a word. Instead, I began to document. I retrieved our phone records. As we'd been on a family plan for years, I had the authority. Karen was excessively texting one number, hundreds of messages monthly, calls at peculiar hours, patterns that mirrored her church activities precisely. I processed the number via a reverse search service, finding Pierce Whitmore, a 42-year-old senior operations manager at Kensington Industries, married with 3 kids. His Facebook profile, filled with pictures of him in a suit alongside a pastor and as a deacon at Riverside Fellowship Church. The same church Karen had recently become devoted to, made me queasy. It wasn't just the affair that disgusted me, but the brazen betrayal of his religious role. Standing before a congregation every Sunday, preaching moral guidance while engaging in an extramarital affair was nothing short of astounding hypocrisy. Yet I remained silent. I required proof. I installed a voice-activated recorder in my own bedroom, perhaps legally dubious, but we were in a one-party consent state and it was my house. Another went under Karen's car seat, while a basic nanny cam was set up in our living room, facing the front entrance. In 3 days, I had all the evidence needed. On a Friday afternoon, the bedroom recorder captured them. I was supposedly attending a client meeting 2 hours away, a meeting Karen had known about for weeks prior. However, instead of attending, I parked 3 blocks away and waited. As expected, at 1:30, a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. Pierce Whitmore strolled into my house as if it were his own. The recording, though void of specifics, was clear in its emotional context. What stood out to me the most was their comfort level. This wasn't a recent, impulsive affair. They shared inside jokes and discussed future plans. Karen casually mentioned divorce, referring to mine as if it were an uncompleted chore on her to-do list. Pierce's words then interrupted, altering everything. He had spoken to Griffin about it, he said. My attorney suggests, if Blake lacks evidence for the affair, we could assert emotional abuse claims, secure a restraining order, retain the house, and require him to provide support while he struggles to prove his innocence in court. Karen chuckled, actually chuckled. He wouldn't contest it. Blake avoids confrontation. He likely would simply sign whatever presented to him. Sitting in my car 3 blocks away, listening via headphones as my wife plotted my legal ruin, a sense of crystallization stirred within me. It wasn't anger yet. That would come later. This was something else. It was clarity. They intended to proactively destroy me, portraying me as an abuser and leveraging the legal system as a weapon. and they felt confident doing so because they had underestimated me entirely. I spent the weekend at my brother's house, declining to disclose the reason, stating that I needed time to reflect. I structured all the data, labeling and saving recordings with timestamps across 3 different cloud storage platforms, consolidating phone records into spreadsheets, capturing pictures of Pierce's car and my driveway with undamaged metadata. I searched for lawyers and found Barrett and Coleman, a firm specializing in high-conflict divorces. On Monday, I called in sick and visited their office. The lawyer handling my case was Sienna Barrett, a woman in her 50s who appeared unfazed by human deceit due to years of exposure. I presented all the evidence, including the recordings, phone records, and proof of Pierce's involvement. She listened attentively, took notes, and eventually leaned back in her chair. "Pierce Whitmore," she confirmed. "He threatened to assist your wife in manufacturing abuse allegations. It's on the recording, and he holds a position as a church deacon at Riverside Fellowship." His Facebook profile is open to public view, filled with photos of the pastor. A hint of a smile flashed across her face. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "I believe we can find common ground, but I require you to take no confrontational actions until we are prepared. Is that possible for you?" "Yes, I could do it. I've been doing nothing for weeks." The following 2 months were surreal. I lived in my house with Corinne, kept up the appearance of normality, observed her depart for church activities and late work hours. Anger would suddenly assail me at unexpected moments, coffee spilling at red lights, lying awake listening to her breathe. However, I channeled it into readiness. Sienna filed for divorce on my behalf one Tuesday morning. Corinne was served at her office. According to Sienna's paralegal who handled the service, Corinne turned pale, muttered something about needing to call someone, and retreated to a conference room for 20 minutes. She returned home that night with tears and apologies. She admitted to a mistake. She was perplexed, but her feelings for me remained unchanged. We could find a solution together. I gazed at her weeping in our kitchen and felt only contempt. "Who is he?" I inquired softly. "What do you mean, there's no one?" She responded evasively. "Who is he? Let me clarify, it's Corinne." Her face exhibited a complex emotion. "I don't know him, it was just, I'll ask again, someone from church. It didn't mean anything. It's over now, I swear." I merely nodded. "I believe you should stay with your mother for a while. We can discuss this through lawyers." She attempted to argue, then plead. Anger filled me as I stood there and took it all, knowing every word was being recorded by the device in our kitchen. Eventually, she grabbed her bag and left. She immediately called Pierce after leaving. I knew because I was still tracking her phone records. They spoke for 47 minutes. 3 days later, I received my first threatening text from an unknown number. "Keep away from Corinne. This is none of your concern anymore. Withdraw the divorce or you'll regret it." I remained silent. Instead, I forwarded it to Sienna. Over the ensuing week, the texts grew more intense. The initial vague warnings transformed into explicit ones. He threatened to tarnish my reputation, make public knowledge of my true character, and protect Corinne from my advances through any means possible. On the 8th day, he texted, "I know where your workplace is. I know your timetable. Step back or we'll resolve this differently." This one I screenshotted and scrutinized for a considerable length of time. Pierce Whitmore had committed a grave blunder. He assumed I was afraid, thought I would yield under pressure. However, he also believed his threats were devoid of repercussions for a man in his standing. He was on the verge of discovering otherwise. I collated every text, every voicemail into one file. There were 6 progressively belligerent voicemails consolidated into a single document. I appended screenshots of his Facebook profile showcasing his church role. I added documents demonstrating the concurrence between his threats and Corinne's church activity timetable. First duplicate was forwarded to Brooke Whitmore, traced through Pierce's Facebook where they were tagged together in numerous family photos, delivered via Messenger along with the message, "I'm sorry you have to witness this. You are entitled to know the truth about your husband." Second copy was emailed to the HR director at Kensington Industries, with an ethics complaint titled "Ethics Complaint Regarding Pierce Whitmore, Senior Operations Manager," using information from their company handbook regarding violations and unprofessional conduct. Third duplicate was sent to Pastor Hayes at Riverside Fellowship Church via certified mail. Included was a cover letter revealing that one of their deacons was involved in an affair with a married woman who had been threatened by him when confronted about divorce proceedings. After a short span, Brooke Whitmore filed for divorce and within 48 hours of my wait. This was informed to me by her requesting Sienna's referral for an assertive lawyer. Later, Sienna shared that Brooke had responded to my message with "Thank you. I suspected but could never prove it. He's done. Kensington Industries acted quicker than anticipated. Pierce was put on administrative leave, and within 3 days, a probe commenced. By the week's end, as per a mutual acquaintance working there, he was asked to resign due to his alleged threats in writing and false legal claim discussions, posing excessive liability. The church took the longest but made the most public response. 2 weeks post the package delivery, Pastor Hayes contacted me personally. Despite his diplomatic tone, it was evident that he was disturbed. "Mr. Morrison, we treat such matters with utmost severity. You requested Pierce to vacate all leadership roles straight away. We plan to discuss this matter openly with our congregation." "Will it be made public?" I inquired. "We advocate transparency. Yes, it will be addressed publicly," was the response. I thanked him and ended the call. 3 days later, Karen phoned me in a frenzy. "What's going on? Pierce has lost everything. His wife won't allow visits with their children. He's jobless." I replied calmly, "The church publicly shamed him and he threatened me multiple times in writing. What did you expect would transpire? You're ruining his life." She retorted, "No, Karen. He brought about his own downfall. He thought there wouldn't be any repercussions." The divorce process became much easier afterwards. However, complications arose when Karen's attorney, coincidentally the same Griffin Pierce had mentioned, attempted to argue for an equitable division of assets, leading to an ethical predicament. Sienna displayed the conversations between Corin and Pierce discussing falsifying allegations of abuse. Griffin fell quiet before suggesting that Corin accept our terms. We reached an agreement outside of court. Corin retrieved her possessions and her car. I retained the house, my business, and my retirement funds. No alimony was granted, as Sienna convincingly argued that Corin's infidelity and unscrupulous legal strategies eliminated any spousal support entitlement. The court hearing was swift. Judge Foster, a practical woman in her 60s, examined the settlement and looked at Corin over her glasses. "Mrs. Morrison, do you comprehend that you're endorsing these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you admit to the evidence detailing your actions during the marriage?" Corin's complexion reddened. "Yes, Your Honor." "Understood then, divorce approved." 11 minutes after exiting that courtroom, a sensation I hadn't felt in months, relief, washed over me. It wasn't happiness. A divorce doesn't equate to victory even for the wronged party, but a sense of being unburdened. The responsibilities of feigning, recording, and strategizing were finally shed. Pierce Whitmore's life charted its own course, and I mostly learned about it through others. His wife was granted primary custody of the children. The menacing messages he sent me didn't aid his argument for a stable parent. He relocated to an apartment on the opposite side of town. His LinkedIn profile discreetly deleted any reference to Kensington Industries and listed him as consulting, a term often used when one is unemployed. The church drama persisted, given the size of the town. Memories he eventually ceased attending any nearby establishments. Karen moved further away, closer to her sister. We haven't exchanged words since the divorce was finalized, and I prefer it that way. 6 months later, over coffee with my brother, the one who'd granted me distance during the toughest times, he posed a question I'd been pondering myself. "Did you overstep your boundaries? You know, sending all that to his wife, his job, his church?" he inquired. I'd mulled it over numerous sleepless nights. "Perhaps I was vengeful, perhaps I crossed the line he threatened me," I conceded after much thought, not during heated moments but repeatedly in writing. He had conspired with my wife to falsely accuse me of abuse. He exploited his role at a church, a sanctuary where people trust him to exhibit ethical behavior, as a facade for an affair. Upon discovery, instead of taking accountability, he attempted to bully me into silence. I locked eyes with my brother. Every place where I sent that evidence warranted exposure. His wife deserved to know her husband was unfaithful, and his employer needed to learn their high-ranking official was discussing illegal activities. It was essential for the congregation to learn that their deacon wasn't as he appeared. I didn't distort or invent anything. I merely supplied them with the necessary facts. My brother gave a slow nod in agreement. "Accountability," he said, hitting the mark. Truthfully, I could have chosen inaction. I could have discreetly divorced Karen, allowed Pierce to recede, avoided conflict as predicted. Perhaps that would have been the prudent course of action. However, prudence without accountability is just enabling. And silence in the face of danger isn't peacemaking, it's submission. Pierce Whitmore wagered I'd be too fearful, passive, or honorable to unmask him. He believed his status, his job, his church role, his marriage provided him with immunity from repercussions. He was mistaken. The evidence I submitted wasn't retaliation, it was disclosure. The repercussions weren't my causing. They were the inevitable outcomes of his actions clashing with the standards he pledged to uphold at the institutions he associated with. His spouse abandoned him due to his infidelity that betrayed their family. The company dismissed him as he demonstrated questionable ethics and disregard for legal responsibilities. His church expelled him because his conduct contradicted their principles. I was merely the bearer of news. However, this aspect remains significant. In the era of digital communication, we leave footprints. Each text, call, and intimidating message forms an indelible record. Pierce Whitmore believed these threats would coerce me into submission. Instead, they served as proof that undermined his meticulously crafted life. Corinne assumed I'd be too reluctant to resist. She had been with a man who shied away from disagreements, who pacified conflicts, who opted for peace over confrontation. It wasn't clear to her that evading disputes equates to a lack of resilience. It merely implies choosing the right battles. Once I decided on this fight, I waged it with all my available resources. A year has passed, and I remain in the same house. My architecture firm is prospering. It appears that mental clarity stimulates creative endeavors. I began dating someone, proceeding thoughtfully and gradually with the cautious hope one adopts after everything familiar proves unreliable, not bitter. Bitterness necessitates ongoing emotional investment in individuals who don't warrant it. I am merely educated. I now understand that tactical silence exists, that patience isn't synonymous with weakness, and that the most effective revenge isn't sensational confrontation. It's evidence. Corinne believed I wouldn't fight. Pierce thought I couldn't win. They both supposed that decency equaled timidity. They were mistaken about someone who avoids conflict, avoiding justice. He erred, and within this metropolis dwells a man who might pause before disseminating menacing messages once more. For he discovered what I had long understood. Contemporary communication not only bridges connections, but also imposes responsibility.